Hello, fellow baggers, and welcome back to Bluebaggers Edge. And yep, we're here reviewing another ridiculously putrid performance from the Carlton Football Club. It's Groundhog Day, and it hurts to do these reviews because it's the same thing by and large, week in, week out. And with the Giants, you know, it hurts a little bit more because they were missing key players, especially through the middle. And as I spoke about in the game preview video, this was an area of the ground they were already vulnerable in, conceding the highest scores from centre bounce and the fourth most at stoppages, and spoke about how we should have easily exploited them. And what happened was actually the reverse. And as I said in the preview video, in an attacking sense for score origins, to drive this point home, they actually score the least from the avenue of centre bounce. And yet we were made to look second rate by a midfield that was missing the likes of especially Callaghan and Kelly, who runs through there as well. And they actually nearly broke even with us at centre bounce and scores from centre bounce. And that's a team ranked 18th in that area of the ground, which is absolutely putrid. You know, to lower those standards with virtually our full strength engine room in comparison. And in the game preview video, you would have heard me highlight how the Giants love to score on the rebound from defensive half and how this was an area of the ground we found ourselves exposed in recent games. And what happened? Well, let's have a quick look. Before we go into the AFL surface level stats side of things, I want to deep dive straight away. So let's do just that. So as I said, conceding via defensive half. Let's just have a little bit of a scroll here. Team stats and defensive half. As you can see there, we conceded 9 goals via defensive half. The area of the ground that we have been exposed for and vulnerable in for how many weeks now? It feels like pretty much every single game of the season, bar maybe, you know, the game against the Cats maybe. Because even when against West Coast, going from coast to coast, end to end, we were exposed by the worst team in the competition, which says a lot. And you know, if raw stats are exposing this, why aren't the coaches finding ways to counter this? You know, it seriously perplexes me. It makes absolutely no sense. I know within the footy club and within every single footy club, they have an analytics team. Football analytics that go through the stats, hand it over to the coaches, and it's up to them to digest what is being presented to them. And it's up to them to counter the issues, rectify parts of the ground, areas of our game, which are deficiencies. And, you know, you want to know the one big issue that I saw time and again on the weekend. Our piss poor setup, yet again, which Voss has our defenders pushing super high up the ground in order to try and congest space and lock the ball inside our forward 50 as the Giants were kicking it in. But sounds good in theory, but the issue in doing that is we had our last line of defense standing in front of their opponents, attacking goal side. Not defensive side, goal side. So what happens? Of course, on turnover, which happened relentlessly, the Giants would either draw these players in and kick or handball over the top, and you'd see a congestion of around about 6 to 7 Carlton players and then a radius of 25 metres just running together and, you know, trailing the Giants' opponents. Like, I know Voss spoke to Ange Postecoglou in recent times, but Vossy, you're not coaching a soccer team. You aren't going to expose the opposition for standing offside by having a defender standing in front of or sitting 10 metres off their opponents. We've been found out on turnover time and time again. And you know how many goals we conceded via turnover? You want to know? Have a look on screen there that I'm just highlighting. 13 goals. 13 out of our total 17 goals via turnover. And every time it was the same method due to the shit setup with our guys uselessly blocking space, allowing countless giants to be gold side. Ole! Wish I had that sound effect, but you get the point. And, I know a lot of people don't want to point the finger at coaches. They want to just point them solely at players. I'm going to point them at both. But on this occasion, and it seems to be the same thing week in, week out, because the lack of setup, the lack of structure, which goes to water as soon as the opposition put on pressure, that is contributing to turnovers, rush kicks, bombing it out of defense into the hands of opposition players and, crumbling under pressure and confidence dropping off the back of that. Now, we've got a core group of players that, if you think back to 2023, by and large, are still in the same team. There's been changes throughout. The likes of Marchbank moved on. Owies, as we know. We've had some inclusions. Youngsters come in, but they're not the issue. Now, the point I want to make here is that our senior team, our core group of players, and I'm talking about Wittering, Walsh, Cripps, Curnow, Harry Mackay, they don't lose skill overnight. I'm sorry. They've been in the game long enough. And nor are they at the point in their career where they should be regressing. They're not a Pendlebury of, 35 plus years of age where they're going to naturally regress, whether it be in speed, a bit of lack of sharpness in the mind, reaction, related skills that slow down. These are players that 2 years on look to have lost a lot of their skill. But you don't lose your skill overnight. And I'm sorry. It's due, by and large, to the way we are being coached and the way we have been set up and our lack of structure. What we've been exposed to and exposed for a majority of the weeks. Now, I want to speak about the players and the negatives we'll start with, because there's a few, and we want to point out a number of players here. But there's a couple of players that we've spoken about ad nauseum, and yet they still play and they're still on the team week in, week out. And that, again, comes down to coaching, comes down to team selection, obviously. What are the coaches doing? So let's have a look. First off, we have someone who has his deficiencies, but by and large is one of our better players, a leader of the club, and it's Weeders. So that was, I think, one of his worst games in recent times. Dropped crucial marks and was really epitomised by the stupid lack of judgment in keeping the ball in play instead of conceding that behind, which resulted in a goal, by the way. And again, the one part of his game that I absolutely despise is his dump kicking out of defence that poses a massive problem, especially when it's just a high up and under and it still falls within the 50-metre arc, defensive arc, that's marked by an opponent. You might as well kick it out in the full, really. But his game was putrid. And you could probably give him a bit of a save execution because he has been, by and large, one of our better players across the journey and across 2025 especially. But it was a bad game. There's no two ways about it. Now, this next guy, I think I've spoken about every single week, even in wins, because, either I've been praising him because it's a really, unique performance, which has bucked the trend, and I wanted to call him out for, some nice things that he's done, and, hopeful that the consistency continues. But it's been too few and far between. I think we've maybe had 2 games where he's been outstanding. One of which he kicked 3 goals, and another one where he was kind of, up there in terms of pressure acts, tackling, everything else. You probably, know who I'm talking about here. It's Jesse Motlop. So again, way too many fumbles, slips, turnovers once again. And again, much like Weeders, you can really epitomise his performance with a one passage of play where he attempted that check side kick from about 25 metres out from goal that travel 10 metres in both height and distance to be easily chopped off early in the first quarter. And that just sums him up, really. And the only positive is, I guess, that he snapped his goal streak and was able to do the old crocodile. But again, 2 goals over the past 5 games ain't it. And he's averaging 0.6 goals a game over half a season, almost. It's not good enough. He's supposed to be our, I guess, salvation, if you want to call him that, in terms of the future of our small forward brigade. And, I've spoken enough about another guy named Fantasia being gifted games last season, which happened. There's no two ways about that. But Motlop is being given a run for his money. I think Motlop's giving, Fantasia a run for his money because the fact that he's being given games, I think speaks more to our lack of depth in not having someone capable enough in that role that can replace him. But I think it also speaks to the fact that there's such a misguided, purpose behind playing Motlop. And I have no doubt it would be due to the fact that he, puts in pressure acts, he lays tackles. But how many of these guys do we need in that specific role on the forward line? We've already got Fantasia, who's played that last year. We've got Frankie Evans, who's done that. We've got Lockie Fogarty, who that's kind of his bread and butter. Durden even as well. But again, how many of these guys do we need in a defensive forward role, especially if they're not kicking goals? Otherwise, what's the use? You don't win games purely off defense. Sure, it may be built off defense, but you still have to kick goals. And what, Jesse is contributing or lack thereof at senior level in that role, which is a very, very crucial role because, again, we don't really have many people on our list that can fill that vacancy. It's just not good enough. It really is not good enough. And in fact, if Fantasia is declared fit enough in round 13, I would much prefer to see him in that role specifically as a small forward. Not a defensive small forward, but in a role where he's kicking goals, because that's what Fantasia does best. And that's what he was doing best when he was at the Dons and even in his early part of his time at Port. And, I've spoken about Voss's stubbornness in the past, and it manifests also in the fact that he persists with Motlop on the ball. Why? It is not working. He offers nothing. I'm sorry. He's not speedy enough. He's not nimble enough. He doesn't keep his feet. He gets caught easily. He doesn't have the quick nimbleness of mind to distribute the ball when under pressure. He doesn't have the skill set, unfortunately. So why is he being rotated through the engine room? I just do not understand. Yeah. Thinking about it, you could probably say, yeah, it's the defensive side of it. But again, we're turning an attacking player who should be, at the base level, someone who is kicking goals week in, week out. And we're trying to morph him into being some defensive player. Like, again, it speaks to our lack of depth in the engine room. If we're having to roll him through the middle, it probably just, it speaks to me that, oh, wait, this is the role that would have been perfect for Matt Kennedy. But nah, we get rid of him. Don't worry, don't need him. It's not good enough. I'm sorry. I'm hopeful that Zachy Williams returns in round 13. I think he's on track to be fit by then. And by God, if Motlop survives that, which I know he will, I will once again be dialing up the pressure on Michael Voss, because we saw it, elimination final against Brisbane. TDK as the sub, dropping the likes of, Cooper Lord, subbing out Matt Kennedy, selecting Fantasia week after week when he wasn't performing a role and he was playing 60% time on ground most weeks. Virtually another sub player. We really, really have to nail down and expose all of these deficiencies on game day, pre-game day, at selection. I'll get into that in a moment. Let's continue on with another player. And it's another guy that I've spoken about ad nauseum. And I'm losing patience even more so with this bloke because he's been in the system for a fair while and a fair while longer than Motlop. It's Gov. Another struggle game for him. He was pushed forward, which I actually didn't mind. And it was something that I actually mentioned, I think we might have been back in round 2, that, maybe we bring Gov forward when Charlie's not there. And that didn't work. And, he's really been a culprit of our downfall most weeks and an outright liability. That's the word that I liken and link to Gov. His kicking and decision-making is not at AFL level. It's not at AFL standard. And it's epitomised again. Another bit of play that really epitomises this bloke as well. In the last minutes of quarter 1, when Darcy Jones had the ball and Darcy Jones is running towards him, and Gov instead of lunging forward and laying the tackle, he instead chooses to step back and corral him. Like what? What are you waiting for? It's just, I couldn't believe it, really. Couldn't believe it. Live at the game, so I had to go back and watch the replay of that because I was like, surely he didn't step back and try and corral him like a soccer player. But he did. And I've been calling for it, but again, he needs a stint in the VFL. We've done it to Doc, and rightfully so. The same needs to happen to Gov. No more excuses. We're debuting enough tools now, and I'd much prefer to see Harry O'Farrell stick around in the team. No more excuses. Sorry, Gov. Back to the VFL. Now, midfield, we got absolutely outplayed, as I spoke about. All of them. Cripps, Hewitt, Walsh. Chera, I think, is probably the only one who can hold his head high. Outside of that, it was putrid. Now, there were some positives. And the positives were, of course, Doherty. He found some form and really stood up and provided options all day and looked like the Doc of old, really. Hungry, chased, got in the right positions, and really pleased to see he was able to respond after a couple of weeks in the VFL. And I hope that happens to the likes of Gov, the likes of Motlop, who needs time at VFL level to develop his game because he's getting snuffed out, really, especially being played through the middle. But anyway, I digress. With Doherty, he played an absolutely incredible role, especially off halfback, which I think he should be playing in more often because that's his traditional role and it's one of his stronger positions that he plays in. Love it. Big tick to you, Doc. Well done. Also want to point out Young's selflessness. Now, he has been probably one of our most selfless players across 2025. He's been asked to play, defense. He's been asked to be pushed forward and plug holes when Charlie hasn't been there, when Harry hasn't been there. He's been asked to go back when Sauce hasn't been there. And again, on the weekend, the selfless role on Taylor. He was putting time into him. He was blocking him, putting body on him at every opportunity, trying to prevent Taylor from manning up on Charlie. Like the ultimate role player. And then gets shafted by being shifted back to defense where it's evident it's a position he is inferior in. Completely under the bus by Voss and co. But it just goes to show he's willing to do what it takes at senior level to carve out a position. And I appreciate that. I really do respect it. It wasn't the best game, but I respect that. Cooper Lord, again, impressed with his foot skills, impressed with his smarts with the footy, positioning. And I still have absolutely no idea how and why this bloke hasn't been playing full games since round 1. He showed in the back part of 2024 that he was capable of adjusting to the speed of the game. And, the unofficial practice game against the Saints in the preseason looked really good, really good. And I thought he's a shoo-in for round one. Nope. Lack of confidence from the coach. Let's put him as a sub, not just once, but multiple games. Even when he comes off the bench as the sub and performs, no, let's make him a sub the next week. It was only after he was given the Rising Star nomination that Voss has been like, okay, well, wait a second. Maybe he deserves a full run in the seniors. Maybe. Yes, maybe. Again, part of the reason why I'm losing confidence in our coaching staff and particularly Voss. Just ridiculous. How can supporters like myself sit there, watch the players, the team, analyze the way that players are playing, see the way things are being set up, and yet the coaches almost seem as though like they just sit in the coach's box blindfolded. Voss is on the bench just playing Sudoku. Like, what's going on? But Coops, tip of the cap, mate. It's going to be one of our key contributors in seasons to come. Just hopefully the coaches can see the same thing. Speaking of youngsters as well, Harry O'Farrell did some very nice things, took some brave marks, especially considering his size, and, played a role that defied his size. He's quite skinny still, probably best suited as a, third sort of tall defense. But his positioning was fantastic and really did impress first up. And another bit of passage of play, which kind of, again, it was almost like, I'd been thrust into the DeLorean by Doc Brown and sent back 2-3 seasons and shown how Adam Sard can impact games when he's played as an attacking defender. And I'm referring to Sard streaming through the middle, through the corridor, hitting up targets. And it really did highlight what he can do when he is unleashed as that attacking defender. That he does so well. Use the speed, use the nimbleness. Voss, unleash him, for fuck's sake. It just... again, how plays being played, how they're being positioned, what's happening. Now, off this game, no doubt we're all saying, where to from here? Well, I'm out of answers, really. Same shit, different week. And, it's almost evident now that we punch down on opponents below us that are inferior to us, that, those wins make us look and feel better. But at the end of the day, we're not good enough to beat anyone above us 9 times out of 10. And, against the Cats, that now looks like, a case of, the old saying, a broken clock is right twice a day, because that's what it seems like we are. A broken team with a broken system, or rather a non-existent one, with players that just aren't built for senior footy, that are being gifted games and aren't being made examples of. From here, I guess the only thing that helps put a smile on my face, helps give me confidence looking beyond this season, is having someone of the stature of Graham Wright in the back room. Like Brian Cook, he was brought to the club. We all know his history of success at the Cats, West Coast prior to that. But Cookie has been open about the fact that he doesn't like to rock the boat and make sweeping changes. He has been quoted as saying, and I know this for a fact because I was part of filming for a sponsor, and on camera, he said, I don't like making sweeping changes. I like to have confidence in those people hired in the roles to get the job done. So he's virtually the overseer. He doesn't want to really make too many changes, which is fine. That's his style. But Graham Wright, well, he isn't one to sit around. He is proactive and, very, very opposite to the way that Brian Cook operates as a CEO. Wright infamously went on that long walk around the tan and gave Nathan Buckley some home truths about moving on from Collingwood as head coach. And he even made the tough call to part ways with Brodie Grundy and Adam Treloar due to the poor state of Collingwood's salary cap. I remember at the time that I thought the Pies are absolutely cooked here for seasons, because getting rid of two guys of the caliber and quality of Grundy and Treloar, that's going to set them back. But they needed to do it, rip off the Band-Aid. And that is what Wright did. And off the back of that, he went through the, recruiting process. He oversaw the hiring of Craig McRae. Mind you, he was part of the reason why Michael Voss didn't get the job at Collingwood, which is interesting. And, he turned the club around at Collingwood, turned it around. And a big part of the reason why the Pies were able to build a successful culture was off the back of key hirings. Craig McRae, what he did to the chemistry for the team, what he did behind the scenes, galvanizing people, bringing key players in these different roles. Lepic, even Brendan Bolton, who I still contend is, a pretty decent assistant coach. Probably not built for a head coach, but assistant coaching, I think he's got some good chops about him. And, as I said, he's turned around Collingwood. And I have no doubt that Wright will do the same at Carlton. As I said, Wright was the one who overlooked Voss when he helped hire McRae. That's a very, very poignant point. And I have no doubt, knowing that he will currently have the microscope over the coaching panel as a whole, and I expect to see sweeping changes made and the right men brought in to replace them. As what should have happened, I think, at the back end of 2024, I thought a minimum of 2 to 3 changes in the assistant coaching roles, not Michael Voss, but around him. But no, they just hid behind the fact that we had injuries, and that was enough to, help the entire coaching panel survive. No longer. We're losing games with virtually, fully strength team, bar a couple of key cogs that are missing. You don't lose games off the back of that. You don't put in heartless performances off the back of that. The likes of Gov, Motlop, using those two blokes as an example. The usual suspects, having their paper stamped potentially. And, if Voss doesn't make the tough calls will be made for him. And he will be among those tough calls himself if his stubbornness wants to get the best of him. And I think it did in 2024. Back into 2023, what we'd implemented in terms of setup, game plan, everything else was perfect. And then it was almost overconfidence, overcompensating for, the loss that we had against Brisbane in the prelim. And he adjusted things too far, yet he hasn't adjusted back to the way that we were. But maybe the damage has been done. Maybe the damage has been done to the playing group, the confidence both ways in the players from the coaches, but also from the players in the coaches. It really is a flashpoint. It's a flashpoint, and changes need to be made, because we can't go another season with no changes. That's virtually what happened heading into 2025. No changes. Sure, we got rid of some, dead wood in terms of injury-plagued players. Outside of that, what have we done? We brought in, Nick Haynes, who's been a very good recruit, but we've also, I think, outweighed it by the fact that we got rid of Matt Kennedy. And now we're seeing how crucial he was to our engine room. He would have been incredible against the Giants. He would have been the sort of player that we were longing for. But no, we've got Motlop. Motlop will run through there. Let's just have a quick look at the surface level stats, and we'll wrap things up. Sorry, I've skipped over this because I've gone on a bit of a roll and wanted to get some stuff off my chest, because I'm sick of specific players being gifted games, and I'm sick of the way that the team's being coached and the players are being set up and how we're being exposed week in, week out, same way, and nothing's being fixed. So let's have a look. Pretty even across the board in terms of disposals. Inside 50s. Now, we had 3 more than our season average. 11 more, in fact, than the Giants. It was 25 scoring shots, Giants, 22 for Carlton. 3 less scoring shots from 11 more inside 50s. Again, delivery inside 50. What are we doing? You know, the early part of the game, we were hitting up targets. Charlie, Harry, looked really good. And it seems to happen. That's the other thing that's like the most consistent inconsistency of our side from week to week is we start games hitting up targets that are making leads inside forward 50, and then it just goes to water, and then it just goes and descends back into that bomb long, bomb just high up and under, dump kicks, inefficiency inside 50, just terrible. And there we go, efficiency inside 50, 39.7%. Well below the shit standard already of 43%. Giants, 57.4% above by around about 5% on their season average. Disposal efficiency, 70.9 to the Giants, 77.4. TDK, he was nowhere. He was nowhere. I don't know if he's checked out, but I think I'm at the point now where I am comfortable in knowing that TDK's gone. And good luck to him, because that sort of money that's being offered is ridiculous by St Kilda, and they're going to do themselves over, which is fine. But, this is kind of a snapshot of if we're going to get these sort of performances from a TDK, what's the use? What we're offering to pay him, I think is overs anyway. And I don't think we should be, painted into a corner to do that, because an opposition team's willing to pay ridiculous overs, probably 3 times as much as what he's actually worth. But it was an off game. It was a very bad game. He was part of that midfield core that just did miss the mark. Possession-wise, somehow we had, 38 more contested possessions. Well above our season average, but for what? We didn't benefit in any way off the back of that. Because we'd just turn it over. We'd get the contested ball and turn it over. Marks. We had 8 less, I should say. Marks inside forward 50. A big telling sign. We had more inside 50s, yet we had 6 less marks. What? Again, dump kicks. Rectified coaches. What are you doing? Contested marks. 13-8 in our favour. Tackles, 11 less than the Giants. 1%ers. The Giants were just willing to do the extras to get the job done. Nope. We were below our season average. It's sapping, really. It really is. I'm almost just tempted, if Graham Wright was to get the keys, which hopefully he has, and if we were to make the call now, because why delay the inevitable? Like, guys are going to leave at the end of the year, TDK being one of them. That's going to open up a fair bit of money. Who's going to want to come to our side with a coach that most likely will be given the arse at the end of the season? I would be having a very stern chat to Michael Voss, much like Graham Wright did to Nathan Buckley, and just say, this is it. This is the flashpoint. From here on out, if things don't improve, if I don't see areas of coaching where deficiencies aren't being improved, if players aren't up to it, that's definitely one thing. But if you are not structuring up the team correctly from week to week, if you're not making inroads to these deficiencies that just continue week after week, in all likelihood, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to part ways. And I almost hope that's been said, because sometimes I think that coaches need to be given a bit of reality. And I'm a firm believer that in 2023, when Voss was under the pump, his stubbornness had, whittled away in a sense, and he was forced to change things. And we saw the results. Again, 2023, the early part of that season, we were performing similar to what we were now. And then we turned it around. Again, it's the same players. Players don't lose skill overnight. I drive that point home. Our core players, talented players, do not lose skill overnight or within the space of 2 seasons. It can be snuffed out. And it's due to the way that they're played, positioning, everything else. Now, I could speak about this for much longer, but perhaps we reserve that for another video. But for now, we turn our attention to the bye, a much needed break for all of us, I think, and one that no doubt you're looking forward to as a fellow bagger, just to get some clear air without the disappointment of a Carlton performance. Namaste. That's what we say. We go away, refresh, regroup, and we face the Dons. Will we get it done against an injury-depleted Essendon team? I'm not going to hold any confidence at this stage. But it's a flashpoint. It's a time to reset. It's a time to work on deficiencies. And it's a time for, I think, Graham Wright to do his thing. Be handed the keys. Step aside Brian Cook, because now we have a man who's willing to make change and push us in a clear direction of success. Stay safe, enjoy the bye, and we'll be back to do it all again against the Dons in round 13. All the best, and go Baggers.